Welcome, everybody. You have found your way to the Rotary eClub of Silicon Valley. Every week, it's our goal to share cool stories of innovation, entrepreneurship, and education as it relates to service around the world. And this week is no exception. We have talking to us today two folks who are currently in New Zealand, which is not what we'll call close to California, but you know, in the world of the internet, there is no such thing as a geographical boundary, and I love it. So consequently, I want to introduce to you our speakers today. They're going to be talking to us about a wonderful story related to using educational technology to create possibilities in a school in Fiji and elsewhere. Many of you may have seen the video that we have put on our site before, or seen via the Rotary site, the video called Doing Good in Fiji, which tells the story. And it was actually seeing this video that prompted me to reach out and try to connect with these good folks. And kudos to them for going to the trouble of returning my emails. So there we go. We have with us today, we have Kelsi Cox and Dave Birch. And Dave is a member of the Rotary Club of Newmarket in Auckland, and he's project leader for the Digital Learning Room projects. When he is not doing Rotary work, he runs a commercial finance company focused on accounting firms. He is an avid boater and a proud member, proud resident, I should say, of New Zealand, which is home of the Rugby World Cup, I have been instructed to say, and a proud member among many, I am guessing, in New Zealand. Now, Kelsi Cox is from North America. She is from Vancouver, British Columbia, in Canada, and was a Rotary Exchange student some years ago in New Zealand, came back as an ambassadorial scholar in 2013, and she now works with the Digital Learning Room projects and runs a mentoring program for young women in low-income communities with the Auckland YWCA. Dave and Kelsi, it is a pleasure to have you talking with us, the members of the Rotary Club of Silicon Valley. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Rushton. Thanks for the opportunity. And indeed, the world is a small place when you're talking by internet to folks in Silicon Valley. And when you're a long way from the rest of the world, like New Zealand, these opportunities are indeed appreciated and cherished. If I may, what we were intending to do today was sort of run through a little bit of the background of the project, how it came to be that the Rotary Club of Newmarket was involved, and then from that, Kelsi will give you a very short summary of on the ground and then what happened next, which indeed might be subject to some sort of Q&A at the end, because there are some sort of interesting ongoing features of the prospect. So with that, let me just bring up a presentation that we've got available here. It'll be a moment. And you should be looking at the Digital Learning Room, working at the intersections of development, education and technology in the Pacific. And of course, there's quite a number of moving parts when you try to do a project in the Pacific, not least of all the challenges of distance and language and cultures.
Speaking of challenges, we don't actually see the slides yet, so we'll get you to go to the screen share on that one.
Oh, share. Did you go to share?
Yeah.
You did go to share.
Just have a look, Rushton. If you're not looking at that, we're on share. Perhaps we missed that last bit.
There we go.
There we go. Right, so you might be thinking, well, how did a small Rotary club in New Zealand come to be doing this project in Fiji? And sometimes just the planets line up. We had a visitor to the club that was passionate about technology, specifically tablets in third world educational projects, and we had some excellent connections with Fiji and Taveuni in particular, which was the island that we ran this project on. So those two put together, we thought, well, why don't we give it a go at sort of moving the needle in Fiji using tablets, and that was I suppose, the big idea. We managed to put together some money by way of a matching grant, as they were called in those days, on the back of, I suppose, quite a detailed business plan that all revolved around I suppose having the kids in Fiji no longer limited by what educational resources they could access. So instead of education being available to the wealthy and the privileged, if we gave them sort of the keys to the lock, they would be able to exponentially increase, I suppose, their boundaries to the world. So that was the big idea. We knew at the outset that we had some challenges because of the distance to Fiji, the support structures in place, and Kelsi will talk a little bit about how we overcame those. In presenting the project to the Rotary Club, to the Rotary International for the funding, we did undertake to do some evaluation post-project and feed that back to all of the stakeholders, and Kelsi will give us a bit of an update on that as well. So 2013, early 2013, Kelsi went on the original evaluation trip up to, or scoping trip it was, really up to Taveuni. And I'll just flip to the next slide and Kelsi can tell you what she found there and how we reacted to that.
Thanks, Dave. So yeah, exactly like Dave said, a real big driver behind this project was the community that we were working with, so the island of Taveuni. When I first went there in 2013, there were 2 schools, Butalevu and Miyasawa, that were really keen to be involved with the project and also had some excellent leadership and capacity at the school, so the ability to kind of own the project and support it. We worked with a few different partners, so I think that this project is quite unique in that it brought together a global nonprofit organization, Rotary, and brought together a small island in the Pacific community, and then it brought together an academic partnership as well. So we worked with AUT University, which is one of the main universities in Auckland. Each partner brought something really different to the table. Obviously, Rotary brought people who could work on the project, funding, Taveuni was the community, and AUT brought excellent knowledge and infrastructure around technology. I mean, I don't think we could have done the project without them. No. You know, it would have been very different. So they really brought the know-how, to be able to set the project up. I mean, I'm sure you're familiar, those of you working in technology and development, this is what we would call an ICT 4D project, so an information communication and technology project to support international development. It was really a project that was founded on collaboration and teamwork, so everyone sharing their ideas and working together to make it happen. And like Dave said, it was funded through Rotary matching grant, local grant. Yeah. So after I went there in 2013, we came back and set up a plan for how we were going to roll out the project, and that's when we brought AUT on board to help us come up with how would we get the tablets program, what would be the best kind of technological system. Like Dave, I'm not totally a technology person. My area is more in international development, so it was great that we had AUT to help us with this. So AUT works all with Apple products, so that's one of the reasons why we went with iPads, but also because we found at the time that they were really leading the way in different kind of apps that they had for education and learning, and also for their easiness to use, and the ability for people to be able to take them and really learn quickly on them. So when we went back to Fiji in February 2014, we went with a team of 4, so there was myself, 2 people from AUT who worked in pedagogy and training, one of those who was kind of an app developer, so she had a lot of knowledge around kind of computer systems, and a young Rotary exchange student as well who came along as a photographer. So over the week and a bit that we were in Fiji, we trained over 400 students and 40 teachers in how to use the tablets. We set up the kind of what we call digital learning room systems for them. So it was really a classroom that had 30 tablets in each classroom and an Apple Mini and Apple TV. So we had set it up so that the tablets could present to the TV, so it could really be a classroom kind of setting that would work, utilizing technology as a teaching device. We focused a lot on pedagogy, so ways of learning and ways of teaching with the tablets and the different apps that the students could use. They also, Vodafone and Fiji kind of came on board as a partner to offer some subsidized funding for internet access. So that was set up while we were there as well, so that the students were able to access the internet using a wireless connection. We tried really hard to work in a culturally aware way to engage the teachers, to make sure that they were on board with the project, knowing that unless the teachers are on board, the project is not going to be successful. So we did a lot and connected with the senior leadership in the school. Just an idea for the numbers that we're talking about here. The School of Butalevu, which is a public school in Taveuni, has around 400, 500 students, and Miyasawa, which is a Methodist school, a private school, has around 250 students. So, yeah, so those are the numbers. And Judith, who was helping us with the technology from AUT, she really worked to set up the infrastructure and the kind of capability and capacity at the school. So she trained a couple key teachers in how to manage the iPads, manage the systems, and make sure everything was working well. So that's what we did in about a week. It was pretty crazy.
One of the only things I'd add to that was that early in the piece, I think in the larger school, the local Rotarian leader and the school themselves agreed that the teachers would forego a bit of salary to cover the ongoing internet costs, because that was the only real way that the school was going to be able to afford high-speed internet, which is generally speaking very expensive in these out-of-line islands. So that combined with some later Fiji government initiatives has meant that kids have access to the internet, though it still remains expensive and is certainly far from across all of the islands. Yeah, but that was great community engagement at that early stage.
Yeah, and I think the thing I would just add to what Dave said is that we had great local Rotarian champions on the ground for this project. If you watch the video that Rotary made, you'll see Jeffrey Amos in the video. He's an amazing Rotarian who's been working in Taveuni for about 20 years, and he lives there. It's his home. He was really a leader for this project, so having him there was very important.
Yeah, indeed.
So just to give you a little bit of a background to the project, so kind of the theory behind it, we really wanted it to be a community-owned project. So once all the tablets and the systems were there, they all became owned and the property of the school. We wanted to make sure that it was something that the school wanted and was needed by the community and they felt was important. This is obviously an education project, and we had a big focus on how could these tablets support educational achievements of the students and really help them to compete with the students who are maybe in more urban areas. Taveuni is a very, very rural island. It's quite isolated, doesn't have a lot of technology. So, I mean, a lot of these students live in villages that might not have power in the evening. So they don't have the same opportunities as students who live in more urban centers in Fiji. So we really wanted to address that issue, which comes back to the point of structural inequities, providing opportunities for these students in rural small Pacific islands to have the same opportunity to access technology as young people all across the globe in places like New Zealand and the States and Canada, to really try to give them a step up. And development is freedom goes back to the idea of Amartya Sen, Nobel Prize winner in the area of development, and that's talking about, development is supporting capability, so people need to have access to these kind of initiatives. That is the way we will achieve kind of equity in the world, is for everyone to have equal opportunity, but that means that we need to support this kind of capability, capacity building in places that don't have these opportunities currently. And then we also wanted to create a project that was scalable, so one that could be made bigger if we found that it was having a positive impact, so we could expand it to reach more students, more rural communities. And then we also wanted to have a project that was replicable, so one that we could recreate in other areas, maybe other islands, other rural communities. We could kind of duplicate or replicate what had been done. Cool. So some of the challenges, that great photo there, that's actually Dave's creation. That's Dave's charging box for the iPads, which I thought was pretty genius. Great way to save money and totally worked. So yeah, so some of the challenges that we've encountered is that technology changes really quickly. There are new apps that are currently, that are coming up all the time, and how do you kind of deal with that technology evolving so quickly when you are working in a place where you don't always have access to that technology as it changes. So although it might be changing for us quickly in New Zealand, in Canada, wherever, in a rural island in Fiji, they're not going to have access to that same technology as it changes, and access to the internet might not be as stable there. So that's something that we found hard. Yep, community capacity is a really big one that has been a challenge for us. Maybe I'll talk a little bit more about that when I talk about the evaluation, but we have one great, really amazing leader on the ground who's taken initiative and just really led the project. He's at the public school, a teacher at the public school, but it's been hard because he's really the only one who has the capacity to drive the project and sustain it. So that's a real challenge. Accessibility, in that, there's only 35 tablets for a school of 400 to 200. That's a really small amount. And one of the schools, Utalevu, doesn't have a designated digital learning center, so the tablets had to be moved from class to class, and it's quite a hilly school with roads that are in not very good condition. So it became a challenge for different classrooms to have access to the tablets. Sustainability, that's a big one. I mean, it's an every development project, but that's been a big issue around how do we financially sustain the project, how do we sustain the project technology-wise, who supports that, and how can we support the local community to kind of have ownership and develop some kind of financial sustainability so that if things break, they can be able to buy new ones, all of that kind of stuff. And then Western hegemony, Dave and I were just talking about this before. So that refers to kind of the dominant way in technology, and in a lot of ways of teaching is developed from a Western framework. So from a Western frame of mind, and that doesn't always work when you're working in non-Western settings. I mean, it shouldn't, and there should be other ways of knowing and approaching learning and accessing technology, but I don't think we're there yet, so it becomes a challenge, and it was a challenge for us, finding Fijian content, acts with Fijian language, all of those kind of things is not really there. And when you promote technology, this question might be something you might want to discuss, but I would say it does in many ways promote a Western way of being that is a challenge because you're introducing that into a very small rural setting, and you could potentially change the way people see the world, and that's a tricky thing to do. So yeah. So the evaluation, we went back in 2015, so March of this year, this time with the University of Auckland, with Dr. Acacia Cochise. She works in the Faculty of Education and doing education evaluation. And she led culturally relevant, so an evaluation that took into account kind of culture of the Pacific. It was mixed methods, so qualitative, so stories, spoken word about the impact of the tablet, and then also quantitative, so looking at numbers. We did some surveys. And what we were really looking at was how did the tablets impact the way that people learn? So the different conditions for learning in the school, and also to see, kind of how are things going 1 year on? What had been the impact? How are they being used? What were the challenges? And then we also got the students to draw some pictures of how they saw the tablets in their community and what they meant to them. So what we came up with in terms of the areas for development, so 1 year on, what was needed was, and this goes back to the challenges, is getting ongoing staff training. We did the initial, when we went and set up the digital learning room, we did training with the staff, but how do we maintain that when we're in New Zealand, they're in Fiji? It's really tricky. So that was a big challenge. And also there have been quite high staff turnover rates, which is something that we didn't expect. A couple of the key leaders and teachers in a few of the schools were transferred, so that really changed, kind of the capacity at the schools. Again, what I mentioned before, the accessibility of culturally relevant content, that's hard to find in terms of apps. What's out there that's relevant to Fiji? The ongoing financial cost, who's going to carry that cost going forward? Who replaces lost iPads? Who fixes the systems when they don't work? And goes to the next point, the challenge of system maintenance and tech support. Except for the one teacher at Rotary, there really wasn't any access for tech support, so that's still a big challenge. Monitoring what the students accessed on the internet. So at one school at Rotary, they were able to do this really well. The teachers and the computer science teacher there were really able to monitor the content that the students accessed and felt really empowered to do that. But then at the other school, they really hadn't been able to do that. And as a result of the teachers not feeling empowered and comfortable with the technology, the students had kind of taken over, and the tablets were in slight disarray in terms of the content in the apps. And then another area for development that we think could be something really great to look at is how can these tablets be used as a way to promote cultural sustainability. So either recording cultural content, kind of putting Fijian content out there on the internet, different things like that. So the next steps that we think are important are looking at this access and reliable and affordable access to power and the internet. One of the schools had found that internet was just too expensive, so they've really cut down access to the internet. Power is run off of generators, so the schools don't have 24-hour power. They actually only have power for intermittently for a few hours a day, so that's still a big issue. And obviously when you don't have power, you don't get internet, so it's a challenge. Training for the teachers, that's something we really need to focus on. How could we do that? How can we develop and support local capacity to offer that training? We thought about having a student leaders club so that students could really take ownership of the tablets and teach other students how to use them and kind of start maintaining the systems themselves. We wanted to maybe have a local digital learning room tech manager on the ground who could kind of lead the project. We thought that would be a great idea. We have developed a community report which is done in terms of our findings in the evaluation, but then we'd also like to write some academic articles on this, and then we were looking at doing new sites as well. So another school in Taveuni, maybe one on a bigger island in Fiji,
So, Rushton, you can probably gather that we feel like the result of our hard work and success is in fact more hard work. The challenges that we anticipated we've largely addressed, but have far from overcome. We in our analysis, determined that we had moved the learning outcomes upwards and forwards and made the kids more aspirational. They saw the world as a bigger place, which from rural Fiji is no small thing. And simple measures like their pass marks from the previous years who hadn't had the benefit of tablets has improved. But the whole project was all about, I suppose, using some smarts, but also compromising. We've got these tablets that are designed as personal devices being used by groups, sort of cycling through them. So we might have deployed 90 or 100 tablets in total now, but there's hundreds of kids making use of them. And there's a big compromise there because most people perceive the tablet as a personal device. We originally saw them as being community devices, and the compromise has been that we've pretty much locked down the initiative to being of school benefit, and that's something I think we'd like to work on in future. So there may well be some questions from your end. We had ongoing questions, as I say, more hard work, and how do we sustain these projects in terms of their financial sustainability training, meeting the expectations. Sometimes these communities, they've got 30 devices, now 60 devices. What they want is every kid to have their own tablet, but that's not financially able to be done, and nor is the networking of them together with the limited broadband able to be done from a technological perspective at those sites. Similarly so around the leadership that we find and or concede back into the communities from a distance. So that, these are all things for us to solve as we go forward on our digital learning room projects.
Perfect. Well, there are questions to share for sure, and we still got a couple of minutes where we can do it. I want to also introduce one of our charter members, Catherine Liu, who is taking part in the recording tonight. I'm President Rushton Hurley, and excited about the topic in part because educational technology is my professional field as well. And I want to start by asking this question. You mentioned, for example, that in one of the schools, the monitoring of the curriculum was very well, one not so well. You mentioned that another school found it too expensive to maintain the level of the test, and they cut down on that. Now, I assume that the one where monitoring of content as well was the same school as the one that cut down the access. Is that correct?
Sorry, Rushton, we only heard about half of your question. I heard, were you asking about access in kind of monitoring, or?
So there are 2 points in your presentation where you mentioned some challenges or specific to what's happening in the school. One was monitoring content. One of the schools did very well. Another point was there was an expense related to access to the internet connection, and the school cut down on it. Is it the case that the same school that also had trouble monitoring?
I'll answer your question as I think I heard it, but if I wasn't totally, if the sound's not coming across totally clear, but so the school who cut down on access to the internet because it was too expensive was the school who was doing really well and measuring the content, and the teachers were able to monitor what the students were looking at. The reason I think that this school was doing well at that was because they had the teacher there who was really the champion of the digital learning room, who had the most knowledge around how to manage the iPads. Yeah,
the presence of well-trained teachers to make any initiative like this is obviously going to be key. So I'm going to be able to let Catherine ask a question as well. So Catherine, if you want to demute your microphone, and we'll get you in.
Yes, sounds good. I'm talking, maybe it's better to everybody's phone, big phone, otherwise it's going to echo everywhere.
Catherine, with you as well. So actually, type your question in the chat to the right. I can pass that one along. While you are doing that, let me ask you this: when you started working on the project with the Auckland University of Technology, were there particular interests that they brought to the table that surprised you in terms of how to go forward with the project?
That's a good question.
Yeah, so the connection with them really came around, developing pedagogy for the project. The things that they brought to the table that really surprised us are multiple things, Rushton. The fact that they had within their own campus the same challenges that we had in Fiji, which was, a third world campus in Fiji compared to a first world campus in New Zealand. They still had the challenge of teachers feeling alienated using the medium of technology. So, very different geographies, same essential challenge. How does the teacher migrate from being sort of chalk and talk to integrating digital resources into a classroom. So that was a surprise. We thought maybe that had already been nailed in New Zealand or the US, but in fact it's still ongoing challenges. The other thing which Kelsi alluded to was the great debate about whether you have Android or iOS devices. And they were, this particular university was well supported by Apple. They partnered with Apple. They were Apple-centric. To their everlasting credit, they were relatively agnostic about what they helped us deliver in Fiji. So we sat down and did a fairly exhaustive analysis of which one would work best in Fiji, because the initial plan was to roll out very cheap Android devices. The end result was that these were essentially pilot programs, and we wanted to de-risk it. So we wanted to take out most of the scope of risk associated with devices not working, and how we networked 30 of them together in a relatively low-skilled environment. And we also de-risked it by making sure it was the same device that our partners were familiar with. But to their credit, they were happy to run with either, but we ended up running with iOS devices in the end. So both those things were surprises, that the challenges of teaching using digital media and that there was no clear best winner for which sorts of devices to use.
That makes sense. I've spent schools around the world in particular settings, so I think pretty much enough opinions on that. But I won't. Now, Catherine asked about measuring the effectiveness of the use of the device. We're talking about having these devices and thinking about that itself kind of a showcase item. Look, our school has devices. How do you get the teachers into that mode where what they say is, look what they're learning, right? So trying to take folks from, okay, you see that they can create something, to you can see that they can create something that pushes them intellectually, this kind of thing. How was that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we looked at the evaluation and how we would look at kind of the impact that the tablets were having on learning at the schools, we kind of went about it in a couple different ways. So we asked them through surveys, anonymous surveys, what do you use the tablets for? Have they helped you in school? Have they impacted your learning? Those kind of like really direct questions which we asked anonymously. And we asked those to teachers and students. So asked the teachers about what they saw the students using the tablets for and the impact they thought they were having on the students' learning. And then we went in and we did focus groups with the students as well. And so Dr. Cochise kind of led this around, asking the students around what did they use the tablets for, how did they feel they were impacting their learning. So kind of through the students telling us stories. With the teachers, and we used a form of kind of evaluation methodology called most significant change, which is when you look at asking people to tell the story of what is the most significant change that you've seen as a result of this this kind of program, or that's resulted from this project rolling out. So the teachers told us their stories as to what they saw as being the most significant impact as a result of the tablets being used. And then we also observed some classrooms and observed what we could kind of see happening when the teachers were using the tablets to teach. So that was kind of the way. So it was a mixture between surveys, stories, focus groups, and then observation as well.
So,
yeah.
I was going to say,
yeah.
Give us some of the examples of what they considered to be the most significant changes were.
And I think, in terms of evaluation, it was quite a rounded evaluation to look at many different areas, and I think that that's what a lot of kind of education evaluations would do. What we don't have is hard pre and post data. You know, we didn't collect. I mean, we can look at, you know, what were the school's pass rates prior to having the tablets, what are they after having the tablets, but obviously, you know, you're never going to prove causation. We're not doing a randomized control trial. So we can really only know from hearing the stories from the teachers and the students and what they see as being the major impacts of learning. Yeah.
Catherine was also asking about the difference between the boys and the girls.
Yeah, and I think I talked a little bit about this. I spoke at the Rotary International Convention in Sydney in 2014 on the Digital Learning Room, and that was one of the great things that we saw about this project was that there were a huge amount of young women leading this project. Like, a lot of the senior computer classes in the schools were made up of young women. I mean, that's not something that I would have expected from Fiji. Like, I mean, all societies and cultures have problems with gender equity, but I don't think the islands, you know, there are challenges in the islands as well. And yeah, but the girls were totally up there with the guys studying computer technology, and a lot of the senior classes had way more girls than guys. So I think that was something really exciting for us to see. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I am going to write things down, but as I finish kind of the last comment, because of the echo, I'll go ahead and mute you. I'll do it from my side, but I'll have you unmute yourselves in a minute because I want you to give us kind of the last comment for the program. So as you're thinking about that, let me just simply add to all of our members and guests who have viewed this program, we thank you for taking part in our meeting this week. There are two more things that we need you to do before you leave. One is to do the I attended survey. The attendance survey is our way of kind of knowing who takes part in our meetings, and we can send you a little thank you for doing so. Additionally, if you are a visiting Rotarian, having properly filled out that survey means that you'll get an email that you can pass along to your club secretary, which will serve as a makeup for a missed meeting if you need such a thing. And then finally, at the bottom of the page, you will see the Discuss, D-I-S-Q-U-S, the Discuss system that we use for sharing ideas. What things across the entire meeting and in the program stood out for you? Are there elements to the ideas that were shared that you thought were particularly powerful or interesting? Do you have critique for us that we can use to try to improve what we do? We ask that you share your ideas as we go forward. And so with that, I'd like to finish up our program today by asking Kelsi and Dave and pass to you the last word.
Great. Thanks so much, Russian. Yeah, it's been a real honor to present with you and share this kind of story from from the southern hemisphere, from kind of this rural part of the world. But we also wanted to say that we do have a website. So it's digitallearningroom.org. So if you're interested in learning more, please check it out. We've had inquiries from kind of Rotarians around the world who are interested in doing projects like this. So people in Bangladesh. Yeah, we do think it's a project that could be replicated elsewhere. So we're definitely interested in hearing from people. Alternatively, if you have any ideas for how we can address some of the challenges that have come up for us, such as the sustainability, building local capacity, please get in touch with either Dave or I. You know, we're really into working together and collaborating and sharing our ideas to make the world a better place. So thank you for listening, and yeah, it's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Rushton.
Thank you both. And for everyone who has taken part, we ask that you come and visit us again next week at SiliconValleyRotary.com, where we weekly try to get ideas from around the world on innovation, entrepreneurship, and education, especially as they relate to service, and share them with folks everywhere. So we hope to see you next week. Thank you.